So fortunately, we got a chance to talk a little bit off air, and I noticed there's a very well. You're very passionate about firefighters and the work you've done. So let's. There's a couple titles you've worn. You had a career in banking, covered some ground. So there's lots to cover. But I kind of wanted to start there with your work with firefighters, and I think work like abroad in other countries, getting firefighters to volunteer. So I'll let you take it from there to kick things off.
Let me start by saying my life has had lots of zigs and zags, and fortunately, they've been good ones most of the time. We learn from our mistakes. But for the firefighting, I've been working with firefighting departments across Canada for almost 30 years. And that led to me being appointed Honorary Deputy Chief of Vancouver Fire and Rescue Services, which is a great honor, and I'm very, very proud of that. But there's a reason for that. Going back to the international outreach, which is something that's quite extraordinary, is firefighters, they're the heroes. I'm the person who can maybe piece the parts of the puzzle together, but the firefighters, they from across Canada, coast to coast to coast, they will come on deployments to train, cross-train, and learn from fire stations in the developing world. And in the last 30 years, we have firefighters going to El Salvador, which I'm particularly passionate about, but to Belize, to Panama, to Chile, to Colombia, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And what we're doing is we're not only sharing our thoughts and ideas and learning from their perspectives, but we're developing a friendship and a really strong relation between Canada and those countries. So that is very, very cool to me. And I was never a firefighter, but every little boy wants to be a firefighter when they grow up, so I get to play it a little bit now.
I should have introduced you. My apologies. Jeffrey Moore.
That's me.
is joining the West Coast Business Show. William is sitting here with me. We're chatting. And how did that all come about?
Okay, well, that's, again, zigs and zags in my life. But here's another thing I've been involved with. In 1990, I was appointed Honorary Consul of El Salvador, which means officially I'm a representative of that country to Canada. And my jurisdiction is British Columbia. I work with other people in the consulate who are wonderful. But my mandate that has been approved is to, some people will do the more administrative side, the visas, the passports, the authentications, etc. But mine is to help the people most in need in El Salvador. And so I develop projects along that line. And I have worked with surgical teams to do restorative surgeries, more than 1,000 over 10 years, working with advocating for people with physical disabilities for acceptance and involvement down there. But the fun one, I should say they're all fun, but the firefighting one is I started by understanding that there was a need for firefighting equipment, PPE, air bottles, everything from boots to fire engines. And I've had wonderful support sharing the story. And it's turned out that over 100 cities across Canada has donated their no longer needed, no longer code, but still good equipment to our projects. And we've sent it all over the world. You know, we get support everywhere, from storage in Vancouver to trucking to packaging to logistics to accounting, et cetera, and everybody gives as best they can. And that was how the firefighting project started in El Salvador. There was so much demand. That's when it progressed out to the different countries. And countries are always asking us if we can lend support to new ones. And we entertain that. We try as best we can. But it's an organization, Fire Rescue International Training Association. We have no budget. everyone pays their own way on these deployments. They take their own
Like
vacation.
the firefighters themselves?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, there's no. If we are fortunate enough to raise money for any cause, that money is directed to the firefighters that we're going to train with in the developing world. So that's that story.
How long have you two known each other?
We've known each other now since 2019. We met at the Terminal City Club. I go there probably 3 times a week. Jeff is there every day. Jeff,
It's a nice spot.
Jeff to the gym. So we're part of the early morning club.
We certainly are.
City Club. It's a little club we have. It's unofficial, but it's fun. And Jeff, I often ask him, what's the key, Jeff? He's got a 6-pack. He puts us all to game. I don't know how he does it. So, Jeff, that's my first question to you. How do you do it? How do you
Let's
keep
get
in
into the
such
real questions.
such great shape, both physically and mentally? Because you're a real a breath of fresh air to be around as well.
Thank you.
And you're always smiling and in good form. And you got a really positive energy. So how do you do it?
Thank you, William. That's very kind. And I will debate you for a while about the 6-pack, but it's
that competitive. That's how it is.
That's right. It really is an 8. Anyway, Monday to Friday, I smile when the alarm clock goes off at 5:30 in the morning. I get up, have a couple of espressos, and I'm certainly in the gym at 6:30 in the morning. And there's always a band of 8, 10, maybe even 12 people who come at that time frame. And, so it gets you out of bed, it's social, it's good for you, the exercise, the mental, and we do our hour-and-a-half routines, and then we'll shower up, maybe have half an hour for coffee, and we all disperse at 9 a.m. to start our day. But isn't that better than lolling in bed? It's we're up and going and socialized, mentally stimulated, smiles, and that's, for me, that's a highlight of my day.
It's a great way to start your day. It is.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Did you always do it?
I started probably when I was 40. I'm 67 now. So I did that when I was needing an outlet. I've learned about stress and stress management, and now I have a rule: we don't do stress; it's a bad habit. And but the truth is, my father was diagnosed with cancer it was 98. That's what stress is for, and I needed an outlet to just push my frustrations away. And that's when I started going to the gym at the Terminal City Club, and it was in the old clubhouse at that time. And it was a good experience. And so I've loved it ever since. But let me talk about that stress situation. That is a lesson that I share with a lot of people, that stress is debilitating. Stress is a habit. Stress is necessary at times. But when my father had cancer, that is justified for stress, in my opinion. But everything else, if the elevator's taking too long, or that light bulb is out, or my TV isn't working, what have you, that's not appropriate. What did you once say? Don't fight the
2 rules of business.
2 rules. Share that.
Don't sweat about the small stuff. And rule number 2 is it's all small stuff.
Yes, and isn't that good? So you've got to put things into perspective, and then you can be happy. You can, if you feel it's bubbling up, stress, you can push it away or rationalize. Am I going to lose my job because I haven't met some numbers, or that type of thing? Well, maybe that would mean I'm not in the right job to begin with, which is a blessing in disguise. So you've got to think of the whole picture, not just the microcosm that you're in. So that's my lesson on stress. Yeah. And your life lesson, your 2 rules, I like them.
You mentioned your dad there. He was a surgeon.
Yes, he was.
And, was he a big part of the passion, I guess, you have now for giving back to the community?
Do you know what? My mother and father both influenced me in a spectacular way. Dad, as you say, was a surgeon here in Vancouver, and but he was also very involved with the Canadian Paraplegic Association, and so, from the age of 5, I would go on rounds with him in the hospital. I would go to the Canadian Paraplegic Association with him. I would learn, about people with physical disabilities. I would learn, paraplegia, quadriplegia, respirator dependent, all that type of thing. And that is a way of life. It's nothing to be fearful of. And so, Dad gave me that exposure. And when he passed in 1999, the British Columbia Paraplegic Association said to me, Jeff, would you like to sit on the board? And I said, well, how can I? I'm not a doctor. And they said, we've watched you over the years. We believe there's a place for you. And in my heart and soul, I thought I was taking my father's seat on the board, and it was a connection. But within a few years, I was vice chair of the BC Paraplegic Association. I was put on the national board in Ottawa. I was put on the Paralympic board, in some foundations as well, and that was wonderful. But I thought, pardon me, after 10 years, it's time for renewal. And I had given all that I could, and I gave, in my mind, all that I possibly could. And it was time for renewal and let someone else take a turn at it. And that was on Dad's side. My mother had another influence on the more international side. Yeah.
That's fabulous. Thank you for sharing that.
I got to go back to the something you said about stress, because you said about the habit, and this we're calling it the West Coast Business Show, and if you're interested in business, you have to accept a certain amount of stress. But that word, that it's a habit, that sort of stood out to me, and I want you to expand on that a little bit more, because people they get. I've probably been one of them. You get sucked into the habit, and you almost when you get out of it, there's almost a temptation to get back in.
That's the habit.
Yeah.
That's the habit. And you even said that in business there's an element of stress. I will even argue that. If you're confident in what you're doing, so competitive. Stress is, if you think that's the sign in front of you, that stress is a bad habit. Think of that first, and then if you feel it's bubbling up, rationalize and say why. What can I? How can I alleviate it? Can I go around this way? Can I go under? Can I go over? What is the cause? And analyze it. Don't just accept it. And because, as I say, it's debilitating. I think it will make you physically sick.
Yeah.
I think it can have long-term effects. But if you think of it as a habit and try and will it down, rationalize why, that is a good thing. Yeah. And just take control of it.
Yeah. But was it developed for you? Like you walked in this room here. We were talking, and you walked in the room, and instantly you brought this energy right into the room. And and that's from, I would imagine part of that is from getting stress under control. How much of that was developed? We were talking earlier about in athletes. For you, is that a developed thing? You said you started exercising at that level at 40. Where did it come from?
Yes. Okay. Again, it was all perspective. When my father was diagnosed with cancer, that is what stress. You're allowed to have stress for something like that.
Yes.
But again, going back, it's not if the elevator is too slow. And people think of it. You can all think of examples where people bubble up with a bit of stress because the elevator is slow. Well, that's just crazy.
Yeah.
That is my point. Put it into perspective. One, yes, that's legitimate, but are you going to allow yourself to get eaten up, your guts eaten up because the elevator is slow? That's in my mind is destructive and unnecessary and a bad habit.
But did you develop like this way? Was there when you were 25? did you actually feel like?
I think I was normal when,
Yeah.
when I was, and now I'm not normal. But it was when Dad had
You
that.
did do a
And
pivot
that
in
was
life.
it. I thought that is what stress is for,
Right.
not because of VCR at the time. That's not working properly. So that was my moment to decide and understand and analyze and question and just say, that's not necessary.
And it's contagious. I would guess if he's at the gym every morning, you can't really take the day off now because you kind of have to be there.
Oh yeah, he'll call me out.
Yes, we will.
Right. Wearing all these different hats that you've worn over the years, were some of these overlapping?
All, yes.
All of them?
Yes. It's, again,
Just can't talk about it.
if you have, I believe, if you're passionate about something, there's always room for it. And, I have had a full working life. We talked about in banking for 35 years. That was what I enjoyed it very, very much. But that was what paid the bills to enable me to have time to do these other endeavors. And I said, on Dad's side, dealing with people with physical disabilities, that side. On my mother's, that's a story which I love sharing, it was in 1990, so 33 years ago, I was appointed Honorary Consul of El Salvador. And what does that mean? And let me give you just a few sound bites of that. In diplomacy, international diplomacy, most countries have a representative in the recipient's capital. For example, in Ottawa, there might be 180 embassies, 180 countries who have a seat in the nation's capital. Okay, that's the embassy. Then strategically across the land, depending on business relations, the population from the other country, et cetera, they might have consul offices, consulates, we call them. And when I was appointed, I was a lone wolf here in Vancouver. It was an honorary role, meaning that El Salvador, they knew my background and my family's history in that country for 171 years, and they asked me if I would serve. And really what I'm doing is bringing a profile of El Salvador into the British Columbia jurisdiction and, trying to help the people here, trying to develop trade and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But in 2001, there was so much activity going on that they made it a career office, meaning there's a full-time consul general, there's a staff, there's an office that you go to, and they do the things that I was saying, the visas, passports, authentications, the supporting, the et cetera, but that leaves me just to do my heart and soul work, which is developing the projects, as I was saying earlier, about helping people who don't even know how to ask for help. They don't even know help is available. And that's more directed down to El Salvador. But it's also a wonderful collaboration. The career consul general, he has come to Vancouver, but I'm a Vancouver boy, born and raised, so I have a lot more contacts and knowledge of the systems and things, so I can share that with him and the team, and it's a very strong collaboration. A couple of extra points. There's probably roughly 80 consulates represented in British Columbia. 2/3 are honorary, 1/3 only are career. Like Ireland is career, United States, United Kingdom, Germany, France, the large countries with larger populations here, and perhaps more trade, more business, to justify having a full-time representative, paid representative. But the job descriptions are essentially the same whether it's career or honorary, but this one might be a little bit less. And because this one is not paid, the honorary, that's when I was working in the banks, et cetera, for, to give me an income to enable me to do these projects.
Did that the banking background, that must provide you a lot of tools, though, even from a skills and communication standpoint, to be able to speak the right language, to maximize the value of that.
Yeah, that's a good statement. I like that. What the point I want to say is the banks that I worked at, it was. And there were a few along the way. And my highest point that I'm so proud of was president of one of the local credit unions or investment management wing. And that was good. But a lot of people criticize the big bad banks. I will argue that strenuously, competitive again, sorry. But they said, Jeff, okay, we're paying your paycheck, but we're proud of what you do. You go out in the community, you do your projects, that reflects well on us. Mm-hmm. And so, that was, they were very generous with giving me time to do my volunteer work.
Was that an individual institution that you were working for? Did you feel that was pretty consistent across?
Consistent across, yeah. Absolutely, yeah.
So why do you think then? Let's dive into that a bit. Is where do you think the banks could do better at not sort of getting that sort of attitude drawn towards them, or where do you think people are misunderstanding it and sort of develop that feeling?
I think one of the challenges the banks have is they are reticent to share their good news stories. Someone I used to work with said, "Don't hide your light under a bushel," and I like that saying, meaning the banks, they often give, I'm speaking in a very generalized sense, to philanthropic endeavors, $1 million a week. Do you know that? Do you know that? No. It's whether it's promoting sports or arts or even my involvements, they're very generous, but I don't think they do a great job at sharing that very, very positive message.
Beating their own drum.
Yeah.
Do you know the Consul General of Ireland?
I have not met her because she's new, but I know you do. I saw her on St. Paddy's Day at the art gallery. She was giving a speech, and the poor lady was being pulled and pushed. So I thought I'll introduce myself another day.
We'll have to meet her for lunch at the Donnellan City Club.
I would like that very much.
At the gig, and she's a lovely lady.
Yes.
Very. She's funny and she's smart, and we're in safe hands.
Yes, we are. Yes, the people from Ireland are. And that is what I find in the consular community, are people have big hearts and they genuinely want to serve and represent their country well. And and I think she is definitely one of them.
I used to attend one of the Korean events, and their team was just fantastic.
Korean,
same sort of. They were just on it, and I would go to all these events, and they were so welcoming.
Yes.
But there was a drive. I mean, there was definitely a business drive. They're there to work too.
I was just going to say that people, there's always sidebar conversations going on in these consular events. We have it's a formalized group, but it's not impacting how we do our jobs, but it's the British Columbia Consular Corps. And once a month, we will all get together for lunch and have guest speakers. But there's always sidebar conversations between this person, this country, and that country. That's it. There's many events, cultural. Many events that happen, but also I would be meeting with you as example, to discuss what we need to discuss in developing areas of common interest and collaboration.
Is there more people could do with the consulates in the sense that like Canadian companies are trying to do business in El Salvador connecting with, are people taking full advantage of it, do you think?
That's a good question. There's always room for more.
Yeah.
There's always room for more. But I think that companies that want to do importing, exporting, trade, that type of thing, they would know to do that. They would know to go to the consulate of whatever country it is to get information and support and perhaps introductions. It's not the role of the consulate to do the business development for them, but they can certainly say, well, have you considered speaking to this group or that group or this ministry that is part of the government, etc.
Because your reach would be, it's BC, right? So if someone's out a little manufacturing plant, say up in Williams Lake, or these types of, maybe they're not as connected as.
Well, let me tell you one where it is in Williams Lake, et cetera, et cetera. One of the projects that we're working on aggressively is temporary foreign worker program. Okay, right now there's probably 14 countries that are actively involved with the temporary foreign workers. And do you know what? If we're not in competition with each other, we help each other because there is so much need in British Columbia. If we filled every opportunity from the 14 countries, there would still be more people needed. And I've been involved with the temporary foreign worker program for El Salvador to British Columbia and beyond BC's borders since about 2017. Never once has someone said, well, what are these people from another country coming in? Are they stealing jobs? People know that it's absolutely essential. You in your construction life know that. We're focusing on, with El Salvador, agriculture. There's so much need. Thousands and thousands and thousands of people come from these different countries every single year. I remember a story 10, maybe 15 years ago, it doesn't matter. 1/3 of British Columbia's blueberries died on the vine because they couldn't get people to pick it. Imagine.
Wow.
So that's just one example. But so agriculture is one. Hotels, meaning more menial jobs like cleaners, people in back of house in the restaurant, hospitality part of the hotels, etc. Restaurants, that one is where we haven't had great traction with that because the English ability. I remember I took head of the BC Restaurant Food Services Association, Ian Tossinson and Daniel Frankel, Tap and Barrel, down to El Salvador as guests of the government to explore opportunities for bringing temporary foreign workers to British Columbia. And they were saying, I've got to be careful, I'll temper it down a little bit, but I'll say that they were surprised to see the quality and the capabilities of these people, their ability at these culinary schools we visited, but the downfall was they need to speak English. In order to, it's not a requirement from the temporary foreign worker program perspective, but in order to integrate nicely and well
on
and
the ground
and have fun and interaction with your coworkers, English is, or French, depending where, is important.
Yeah.
But so agriculture, the restaurants, the hotels, and now we're starting in construction. We're bringing in this month of March our first 10 people up to give it a try. And we know that people are going to be watching this very, very carefully, and to make sure that the processing time is as fast as it possibly can be from the moment the employer fills out the labor market impact assessment to finding candidates for them to screen, typically by Zoom. Sometimes the employers go down to the countries to do the interviewing. But so those are 4 areas, sectors that we're working on. And there's so much more to develop.
Yeah.
We have done that.
Yeah, I was going to ask.
We have utilized that program and had great success. In particular with cooks for our
Okay, and
kitchens.
build on that. Where did they come from?
Colombia.
Colombia.
Yeah.
And was English an issue, or
Some of them have good English, and some of them
not so good?
Yeah, it's not so good. But you know, you can pair them up and just until they can improve on their English, help them out. But
Good.
And these are generally younger. Are these generally younger people? Is there an age range, or
anything from 20 to 30 years of age? I think. But
Because generally what happens is they come by themselves, leaving family behind. And they, depending on the sector, there's many different routes, but typically it would be they would come up for 2 years to have the experience. And from El Salvador's perspective, then they would be going back to the country with the skills, with presumably more money that they have earned up here versus working down there, with an English ability. It's a win-win-win situation, the Temporary Foreign Worker Program. It really is good. And again, I say, never has anyone said, what are you doing bringing people from another country? They all say, hurry up, we need more.
Yeah, I've heard from some of my circles is a confusion of how to, and that's why I think I could probably phrase the question better. Asking about support more from the program, like you using that program. What was it about that program that worked well? Like, I mean, the actual process of it, getting the workers here to help.
From my experience, and I wasn't dealing with it directly myself. It was more so our management of our pubs, and it was a pretty smooth process from what they told me, and pretty quick as well. I'm going to say a couple of months.
Well, that's kind of key, right?
Yeah.
Because
so a couple of months from start to finish.
Yeah.
So
you know, it's improving, William. You know, typically it was several months. Here, just to give a few points. Employer A, says, I need people in to be a cook or to construction, whatever the sector is. Okay, I need people. So they have to fill out a Labour Market Impact Assessment, LMIA. And that is a Government of Canada document that is very, very, very detailed. And what that does is it proves that the employer has scoured the markets for Canadians first, and they've fallen flat. They have not been able to get what their needs are. So then in those situations, there's a lot of steps along the way with this LMIA. But once that is finished, it's that opens the door to look for employees at the respective countries. Interestingly, LMIA is $1,000 the employee pays per person, whether it's accepted or rejected. You know, so there's a commitment. Thank you for that. But once the LMIA is approved, that can take a month or two. There's a delay there. Then but while they're doing that, they can be scouting out opportunities for workers, and in the different countries or sectors, whatever the case may be. And then there's the interview process, as I said, either Zoom or oftentimes the employers and large companies will go down there to do a culling of applicants, and then there's, I would say, 2 months of that. They have to get the Canadian visas, which is dealing with the Canadian government. They have to. There's steps along the way that are pretty arduous, but once they're in, that's it. I remember speaking, last point about this, going up to the wine country in the Okanagan, and speaking to a Mexican worker who was in the winery, and said, how are you liking it? He said, I love coming up here. This is my 5th time, 2-year experience. And you see this young person beside me, that's my son. He is now coming, so we're offering a land of opportunity to many people. They're saving us, but we're helping them too.
And didn't they just didn't just a new policy come in about something about if you're a temporary foreign worker, your spouse can come in? I think there's just something just came in.
There's many different lines, okay, and so that is, if that hasn't happened, it will happen. But I don't know if it's for every sector,
right? Yeah,
but that is something, because, as I said, oftentimes 2 years, sometimes in construction it can be 3 years.
Yeah.
And you know, the employer typically would give at the end of the first year, the employee airfare to go back home on leave, you know, for a given period of time, and the end of the second year too. But still, you're away from your loved ones, your family, and the good employers understand that, recognize that, support that, and help with that. And that's meaningful. You know, there are, let's be very frank, there are some employees who are not all that good, but some of the members of the Consular Corps, we helped craft some British Columbia legislation for the protection and welfare of temporary foreign workers in British Columbia. And there's awareness that there's some very good employers and some who are not so good. But there will be penalties. There will be recognition of those ones, and they will be cut short. So, yeah, it's a good program.
Yeah. Can you talk a little bit more about the support going the other way too? You've touched on it earlier, but just sort of expand on it, specifically to El Salvador, some of the support work that you've got going back.
Okay. The main one is with the firefighters. That's for me. Okay, but El Salvador and Canada, they're always looking for trade opportunities to build. Okay, but speaking personally, you know, getting these firefighting deployments, I say cross training. It's not training, because our guys and gals learn often as much as they share. And again, it's a friendship thing. It's recognized. Senator Larry Campbell, when he was mayor of Vancouver, before he became senator, I went to see him with the Vancouver fire chief, and then this very strong firefighter, strong in terms of capabilities and commitment. The three of us went to see Mayor Larry Campbell, and we said, we understand there's one fire truck that the city is going to be auctioning off. Well, that's very interesting. You don't typically need a fire truck. You don't. I don't. So they go for nothing. You know, I'm making this up a little bit for illustration, but perhaps $5,000 for a fire truck that new was costing $500,000 to $1 million, because the wheels are more than $5,000. But who wants them? And so Larry heard the story, had always followed my work, kind man. I will always say doesn't suffer fools, so I think I snuck past. But he said, Jeff, and to Brian and to the chief, I don't have one, I have 3 fire trucks, and I am giving them to you to take to the fire department in El Salvador. That's when we started to get big. Wow. You know, it wasn't just boots and PPE. Now we're talking fire engines. The shipping companies that were always shipping for free, this is a nice little sidebar. The shipping companies that were always shipping for us for free, I won't mention them because they said, please don't make that public, otherwise everyone will be hiding them. But they said, okay, now we're not talking about bits and pieces, pallets and that kind of thing. We're talking about fire trucks. And so if I've got the numbers correctly, and I'm sure I do, they said to ship 3 fire trucks from Vancouver Harbor to El Salvador would be $60,000. Give that to me as fact. We have, as I said before, we have no budget. There's no money. Firefighters pay their own way to go down there on the deployments, as I've said. So we went speaking to Rotary clubs over and over and over again, and sometimes we'd get $100, we'd get $250, we'd get a little bit of money. At the end of the year, we had, $60,000 they shaved it down. They spoke to the stevedores, the unions, the logistics people, etc., and they brought the 60,000 down to 15,000. That was how that worked. And we got the 15,000. We said, how do we get this money to you? And to the shipping company, they said, you don't. We've watched you people work for a year, your dedication and all that you've done, the reason behind it, it's free, and forevermore it'll be free for you. And so there we're almost all in tears because it was such a wonderful gesture. Wow. But that was the beginning of the fire engines. We went back to all the Rotary clubs and said, hey, this money you gave us for shipping is free. Every single Rotary club said, you keep that money as long as it's for the firefighters that was for. One more point. Larry Campbell, when he became senator, he's always been involved with us. He's always been an advocate and supporter. He's talked about our work in the Senate of Canada, but not so many years ago, he said, okay, guys and gals, I want to see what you guys are really doing in El Salvador. And he came down, not on the taxpayer's dime. He paid all the costs himself, not for a polite 2 days, but for 2 weeks to really understand and meet people and help us open more doors. And he has never ever forgotten that. He loves El Salvador. He keeps saying he wants to bring his wife down there for Christmas one year. And it's a country that's had a lot of knocks, but it is beautiful. It's a wonderful place to be.
What's your family history of El Salvador?
Our family has been there 171 years, 7 generations. What they were doing was in the year 1852, they were in Europe. They were wanting to go to the California gold rush. Well, if you've ever watched the TV show Yellowstone or 1883, it was very, very dangerous to cross North America at that time, 1852. The rail had only been invented 20 years before, so there wasn't a crisscross of rail, so you would have been going by wagon across North America. There were so much danger, so much was uncharted, that it was not the recommended way to go. So what they did was, and many people did going from Europe to California, they would go to the Isthmus of Central America, into the Caribbean, to the Isthmus of Central America, cross over somehow, and then take a boat up to California. But our family thought, okay, there's more, so much of the Spanish originating countries got independence from Spain, 1811 to 1821. So they were almost starting with a new blank sheet, Latin America, so much of Latin America, that my family thought there was more opportunity there. And they've been involved in coffee ever since. My direct line, because of the Civil War that was from 1980 to 1992, unfortunately, because we're all up here, we lost holdings, but cousins who are still very active down there did not. And so I go there once, twice, maybe even 3 times every single year. The generosity of my cousins enables me to do my projects, and that's how our family has been there for 171 years.
Well, I got to ask you a question, and I think it'll tie together. We did another interview. I did an interview just with you, asking about your journey, and now, I mean, we're sitting here in your bar, having these discussions. This is our 3rd guest we've had on the show. What's it like for you? And the same for you. Just getting. I mean, lots of stuff left to accomplish for both of you, but just getting to sit here and have these discussions and reflect back on getting to this point. You sitting here right now having this conversation. What is it? What is it sort of like for you? Seeing what's kind of come about from what was supposed to be, I think, a 6 week stay from Ireland.
I guess it's kind of surreal. Is the first word that comes to mind. Came here in 2009 for 6 months. Didn't think I would stay the 6 months, and here we are, 14 years later, sitting in one of our pubs in Gastown. Interviewing legends like Jeffrey Moore and Mayor Mike Hurley and Jay Demerit, you know.
Yeah.
So it's just amazing what you can do, I think, when you put your mind to it. And somebody said to me in our office one day, did you ever stop and look back and see where you are, 3 years ago? And that person knew me pretty well and kind of knew that I didn't, but said, hang on a minute, and pulled up our Facebook page and went back 3 years. And, we were working out of the back of our house. My wife, Laura, was kind of running up HR and business, doing everything really in the office. And Martha was our office manager, and there was just the three of us. And I was kind of out on site myself most of the time. And, when you go forward a few years, we had 3 offices and, maybe 150 full-time staff. And it was like, how the hell did that happen? But it kind of brings it on to, it's really the land of opportunity here, I think. And when we're talking about the LMIAs and immigration and, the big move, it brings back a lot of memories to me when we came here. We came here and we didn't know anybody. We didn't have a phone number.
I was thinking the fact that you two are connected, and then now we're sitting here, and I've got a team sitting behind the cameras, and it's just like we're all of a sudden we're all here.
We didn't have a phone number. We didn't. We didn't. I didn't know much about Vancouver before I came here, but fell in love with the place. I never thought that I would live outside of Ireland. Not for more than a couple of months anyway. I never thought I would. I'm from a big family. All my family are in Ireland. My brother Brian now is here. He's our CFO actually. Came about a year ago. But other than that, all of our family are back in Ireland. I thought that's where I'd grow up. But it's amazing the way things change. And when we came to BC and seeing how beautiful it was, we just couldn't leave.
Nice.
And then kind of surrounded ourselves with the right people, I think. Met great people here. And I can't say enough of good things about the Canadians, no more than yourselves. The people were so friendly, so helpful, just good, honest people with so much integrity. And it makes it that much easier, when you're 5,000 miles away from your family, and especially when you're having kids and stuff like that. You don't have, I guess you feel like you don't have the support network of, grandparents. But our neighbours in Creekside Village, where we live in South Falls Creek, they're incredible. We have to go to an event, they're fighting over babysitting, and it's a real community, and we love it here. But that's why I guess we like to help people like our cooks that came from Colombia. When they came, we sent them out to the Raven in the North Shore, and it was a bit of a trek going out there from downtown. Their accommodation was downtown. They were happy with everything, but it was like the buses were, it was probably took an hour and a half to get out there with public transport. So we gave them a vehicle, and we divided them up and kind of said, here's a vehicle, and you can share, and that worked great, and they appreciated that. And now they're, they couldn't be happier, and because we helped them, they're helping us, and it works both ways. There's
one of my favorite lines is "Good people helping good people do good things."
Yeah,
and you're helping.
I think that's on your LinkedIn.
It is. When it says your job, I put that instead.
Yeah, I noticed that.
Yeah.
So it's my mother always said it costs nothing to be nice, and
good for her.
I think that's it's as simple as that, really. Good things will happen to good people, and whatever you put out there, I really believe will come back to you.
Yeah, and for you, does that this career that you've had that sort of touched so many different points, getting to sit here and have these meet people like William and all these other people that you're interacting with, it's almost this again. We just met, but it almost seems like you're still on this like kind of zigzagging adventure.
I will always be on that. I hope when I'm 110, I'll still be saying, I wonder what I'm going to do when I grow up.
Yeah.
And I really mean that sincerely. I believe that, I've had some wonderful opportunities and I've enjoyed the ride so much, but that motivates me to want more.
Right.
There's no thought of me slowing down. I'm thinking, how can I expand? Always. And if you enjoy what you're doing and looking for other opportunities that you will enjoy, then then there's always room for it. And also, if you find that there is something that you've gone into that isn't the right fit, admit it. You know, again, there's a stress situation. Don't belabor something you're not happy with. Pull it, you know, and
that's so true. We often say that to our teams when we have our weekly meetings or our monthly meetings. You know, is everybody happy? It's one of the questions we ask. And if you're not, you know, you don't need to tell us right now, but please, you know, let us know as soon as possible. Because if you're not, you shouldn't be here. You need life is short, and you need to be doing something that you're very passionate about and that you love doing, or else you're not going to be successful. You know, if you're not giving it 100% or 110%, you won't enjoy it and you won't be successful. No. You need to find what makes you happy.
And then you're going down the abyss because you're not happy, and then you're not caring about the work, you're not doing the job.
And it spills over into your family.
So down you go.
Yeah, so people can feel that energy. Exactly. It affects everybody. And we say to them, like, we say it in a nice way, we're like, we'll help you. You know, I'm sure we'll have contacts that we can help you get into the industry that you want to get into.
Be honest with us, and we can be honest and helpful to you.
Yeah.
It's well, I will say, gentlemen, it's quite an honor for me to get to sit here and talk to both of you and get to, I mean, I get to do this for a living. It's unbelievable. The people I get to talk to and just pick their brain, and then I get to go and transfer all that on hopefully onto my team as I'm trying to build and grow people and grow myself. So thank you both for doing this. It's been a ton of fun.
Thank you. It has been a ton of fun.
And thanks
for the opportunity.